I have a lot of fun, weird, and somewhat unique multi-chamber ocarinas. I've featured most of them in videos like with the Songbird triple harmony, but today we're gonna make some rudimentary classifications of fun, weird, non-standard, and unique multi-chamber ocarinas. But first, let's define standard as it relates to multi-chamber ocarinas. First, the primary purpose of additional chambers is range extension, not harmony. For example, if you go up the scale on my Imperial City triple bass, which is very standard, everything is extended range. Second, the first chamber, if an alto C, has a range of A4 to E flat 6. And then the second chamber starts on the E natural, it continues upward. It doesn't have to specifically be A4 to E flat 6 because you could have a soprano ocarina or a bass ocarina, but the concept, the rudimentary standard, that's what we're going with. An octave plus 3-ish and then continued range. The third and final criteria is no overlapping notes between chambers other than like small exceptions like maybe a subhole to make your E natural go down to E flat in the second chamber to match the first chamber. Like... that was two E flats at the same time, but that's the only overlap in the Imperial City triple bass. So to reiterate, 1, additional chambers are exclusively for more range. 2, the first chamber, if an alto C, has a range of A4 to E flat 6, or that equivalent octave plus 3 in whatever key you're in, with the second chamber continuing that progression upward. And number 3, no overlapping notes other than tiny exceptions like a subhole in the second chamber. So based on that criteria, my standard multi-chamber ocarinas are the Focal Link Soprano G that I got from Songbird, the Songbird Ocarina of Time double, the STL plastic triple, and the Imperial City triple bass, which I've been using for most of the examples. Now, get ready for 4 categories of non-standard multi-chamber ocarinas that break one or more of these rules. Category 1 is overlapping notes. These are very similar to standard multi-chamber ocarinas in how they look and how they sound, but they may have overlapping notes between their first and second or second and third chambers, or both. The first example is the Spencer Virtuoso double. This is my most expensive ocarina. The thing that makes this ocarina unique is that the first chamber is a complete 12-hole ocarina. Instead of ending at E flat, it goes to the full F. So instead of having a range of A4 to E flat 6, it has the standard 12-hole range of A4 to F6. So there's a complete overlap between the first and second chamber for the E and the F. This doesn't seem like much because it really is only 2 notes, 2 half steps, E and F, but it makes some songs a lot easier to play when there is a lot of chamber switching that would be in the D to G range. For example, some phrases in the first chamber might go up to the E, and this prevents you from having to change your chambers as often. And then the second chamber might go down to the E, and then you can stay in the second chamber without switching chambers. It does make some songs a lot smoother to play. Let's do an example. So if you notice, the phrases were like, but I should have bought you flowers. There's a chamber switch there, but then the phrase, and held your hand. No chamber switch necessary because it only goes up to the E. So you get the full range to play the song, but because this ocarina goes up to the E and the F in the first chamber, there are some phrases in the song that are significantly easier to play a little bit more smoothly because you're not switching chambers quite as often. You do need a double ocarina range to play this song, but this one makes it just that much easier, thanks to the overlapping notes. The other category 1 multi-chamber ocarina that I have is the Songbird Harmony Triple. I have a full video on this if you want more details, but very quickly, the unique attributes are that the chambers have a lot of overlap. As you're going up the scale, instead of continuing upwards in the second chamber, it goes back down to the C. So it goes C, D, E, F, G, and then going to the third chamber, it goes back to the G and then continuing upward. The second chamber is literally an octave up of the right hand of your first chamber. And the third chamber is an octave up of the left hand of the first chamber. So here's the full scale. Because of the overlapping notes, you do lose a substantial amount of range that a triple ocarina could have, but the sheer amount of overlapping notes makes for a lot of great opportunities to play harmony, hence the name Harmony Triple. That's an example in the song, but you can play a bunch of chords too. Or even a full C major chord. Yeah. This ocarina is probably one of my favorite ones to play because it's just so fun to play around with those harmonies, but it is limited compared to other triple ocarinas because it does lack range. It has about the range of a double ocarina, even though it is a triple ocarina. Next, we have category 2, which is standard but wacky. This is the STL max range double, which is very technically a standard ocarina by the rules, but it's a bit wacky in that the second chamber effectively has a third chamber once you lift the thumb hole. Let me show you. For a normal standard double ocarina, the second chamber's range would typically go as follows. And stop there. However, this ocarina has a thumb hole that when you lift it and then put your 2 fingers back down, you gain an additional 3 notes. So it does go significantly higher. The pseudo third chamber, by lifting the thumb hole in the second chamber, the highest note there is effectively all but the 2 highest notes of an actual triple ocarina. You're only losing 2 notes. And anything above that on an alto is a little too high. So I think the main draw of category 2, standard but wacky, is fewer chamber switches. By getting a lot more range from your second chamber and using your fingers instead of moving the ocarina itself to get to the third chamber, you can have slightly more continuous phrases because you're not switching your airflow from one chamber to another. I personally prefer chamber switching because I prefer more linear fingering. This does require a bit of combo fingering, going like lifting these 2, putting them back down, and then going like that. So I generally would prefer a triple ocarina over this type of ocarina, and I don't know many other ocarinas that fit into this category other than the STL max range double. However, because it basically has a third chamber as part of the second chamber, it is standard but wacky. Next, we have category 3, simultaneous scales. I have 2 ocarinas that can play at least an octave of simultaneous scales, the Coda Everyday Carry Flute and the STL double pendant with maximized range. I have dedicated videos on both of these as well if you want more information, but we'll start with a quick sample on the Coda. What makes the Coda unique is that it is inline, so you hold the ocarina straight instead of at any angle. The typical ocarina shape like this is transverse, whereas this is inline where it's completely straight and your wrists are straight. As someone with somewhat sensitive wrists, I do prefer holding inline ocarinas, though my favorite ocarinas tend to be transverse. So with the Coda, the main scale of C to C in alto C and soprano C is 1-to-1 a match. Some of the chromatic things are different fingerings, but the tonic scale, perfect match between the alto and soprano chambers. It also comes with little mutes that you can put into the ocarina like so to reduce the sound. So makes it 98% quieter, which is great for practice. And it's made of ultra durable polycarbonate, which is great for taking this on the road with you. It also comes with a nice little clip to attach it to your bag, pocket, belt, whatever. Then we have the STL double pendant. That's the first chamber. That's the second chamber. There's the two chambers together. I really do like the idea of being able to play two notes simultaneously on an ocarina, but in practice it is a bit not useful unless you are playing songs where you specifically need notes simultaneously. If you're doing this for range, it is a bit impractical to go from one chamber to the next when you go from no fingers covered to every finger covered. Like if I'm playing a continuous scale from the first chamber to the second chamber, one note at a time, it is awkward to put all your fingers back down when switching chambers. It makes a lot to think about when you're switching your chambers if you're using it for the range. I think this type of ocarina where you can play scales simultaneously is incredibly innovative, just not particularly useful for a lot of people, unless you either have songs where you spend a lot of time in one chamber or the other without any quick switching or much quick switching, or songs where you play both notes in the scale simultaneously for a cool double octave effect. Danny Boy is one of the example songs in the songbook that comes with the coda, but that's one song where the chamber switching feels relatively practical, but the moments where you're going from the C in the second chamber to the A in the first chamber, it's a bit awkward going from everything covered to only two fingers covered. These are things that you could practice through and you could make them useful in your day-to-day playing. It's just not necessarily for me in my day-to-day playing. In any case, I think the simultaneous scales are fun. I like that they provide the option for you to have a ton of range in a compact ocarina, but to me it feels a bit more gimmicky than useful. I think the coda executes it a bit better than the pendant because it is far more ergonomic and playable, but category 3 simultaneous scale multi-chamber ocarinas are not right for me, but they could be perfect for you. I don't own anything in category 4, so I'll just show you. So category 4, I will call wacky and cool harmony-centric ocarinas that I don't own. So the Songbird Harmony Triple does technically dip into this category because it is designed for harmony, but there's a very specific type of ocarina that I'm thinking of when I'm going for wacky and cool harmony ocarinas. So if you're looking at the harmony double in G by Songbird or the harmony double in alto C by Songbird, this is what I mean. We'll play a bit from this clip by Songbird on their page. So this particular ocarina is like technically a bit in the simultaneous scale area, but the thing is you don't have to play the scales simultaneously. Whereas if you're playing the two chambers at the same time in like the coda or the STL, you do kind of have to play the scales simultaneously. This one, you have an alto C chamber and a soprano C chamber, but you can play them independently because they're not overlapping finger holes, like with the coda right here. So this is what I mean by wacky and cool harmony ocarinas that I don't own. There's another option like the Lovebirds, which is very similar in how it works, though they don't have any sound samples. And STL actually has a bunch of ocarinas of a similar ilk, like the quadruple tenor in C major, which is designed to look like panpipes. It's all in different keys, and then you can just play 2 or more of the chambers simultaneously for cool, unique harmonies. They have the harmony Ivy ocarina, which is very similar, that you have 4 fingers on each hand, and then you can blow into the chambers. They have the ambidextrous one, which I don't think is a harmony, but rather you can just kind of adjust how you blow into it. But the point is, there's this whole extra category of multi-chamber ocarinas that are designed for like unique harmonies that are a little bit gimmicky, not super practical, but there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with this type of ocarina because you have one hand playing one set of notes and your other hand playing a separate set of notes, and you can play them together or in harmony with each other. And I think that's super freaking cool. Just not practical enough for me to buy one and add one to my collection. These ocarinas also typically are very bulky because they're like split. Like that is a bulky V shape, and my ocarina cabinet is getting a little jam-packed with ocarinas. I might need to sell some soon. Or get a bigger cabinet. There may be more categories of multi-chamber ocarinas if there's more unique ocarina makers out there, but these are the 4 categories that I've identified of non-standard multi-chamber ocarinas. The next to figure out is which is most useful for you, or most appealing for you. I'll go into which one I think is most useful for me. But before I tell you, guess what it is? Put it in the comments, leave an edit if you're right or wrong. I'm gonna stall a bit so you have time to write your comments, but okay. Which category of non-standard multi-chamber ocarina do I find most useful? My answer is category 1. Overlapping notes. Provided the overlap doesn't eliminate too much range. The main criticism I see of the Songbird triple harmony is that its range is very limited compared to other triple ocarinas, but I think it's enough range for most songs. I really like how just a little bit of overlap between your chambers, like with the Spencer Virtuoso double, can give you a lot of options when you're playing songs that are in the paesaggio between your 2 chambers. Oops, I'm using a vocal term. For you non-vocalists, the paesaggio is like the region between your chest voice and your falsetto voice. It's that range where you use your chest voice or your falsetto voice and kind of have to switch in between them, and can do some of the same notes on either voice. So I could do like, ah, ah. That was chest and then falsetto. So in the case of an ocarina, my chest voice would be the first chamber, and my head voice would be the second chamber. Head voice is falsetto. I'm using a lot of vocal terms. Apologies for the music theory jargon. But the point is, I guess as a vocalist, where it's very useful to have some overlap between your chest voice and your falsetto voice, I really like that same thing in my ocarinas. Overlap between my chambers, my chest first chamber and my falsetto second chamber or third chamber. But basically, I think that a bit of redundancy in your ocarina's range gives you a lot more freedom to play some phrases in your songs a bit more fluidly. And in some cases, it gives you great potential for harmony, like with the Songbird triple harmony. The Spencer's not much of a harmony boy, but it does make some phrases in some songs a lot easier to play when you have to switch your chambers a bit less frequently, or can decide one chamber might be a little bit better than the other, but you have options. You got options thanks to the overlap. You know what else is redundant? Maybe this video, because I've covered all these ocarinas except the Spencer Virtuoso in their own dedicated videos. Maybe I'll have to do a video on the Spencer Virtuoso one day. We got category 1, overlapping notes. Category 2, standard but wacky. Category 3, simultaneous scales. And category 4, wacky and cool harmony ocarinas that I don't own. Which category is most appealing to you? And if you already own ocarinas that could fit into one or more of these categories, which is your favorite that you already have? And if you're curious about any of the ocarinas that I've mentioned other than the Spencer, you can check out dedicated videos reviewing each of them. Thank you to my patrons, especially my $5 tier patron Joshua. You can help support my ocarina reviews and education for as little as $1 a month on patreon.com/Andy Cormier. Otherwise, leave a like, subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time. Happy tootin'.